Hello and welcome to How to Win the Lottery Season 7 graphic content. Our first interview this season. We have with us today is it artist, illustrator? What's your preferred title for this book?
I guess it would be storyteller, maybe.
Ooh, I like that, storyteller. Marcos Martin. Hello, Marcos.
Hello, how are you?
Good. So we were just talking before we started recording that you were apologizing for your accent. And I was like, no. We talked about this via email. Your English is phenomenal. I went to Barcelona last year for 2 weeks, and I studied Spanish on Duolingo for a year. And the first night I was there, I was at a restaurant looking at a menu, and I'm like trying to read it. And I'm using Google Translate, the Lens app, and the guy's just like, "Do you want an English menu?" I was like, "Yes, please." Like I tried so hard for so long to not be that kind of American who like goes places and just like only speaks English, and then like immediately they're just like, "Here you go, my guy. You just here's the English menu for you." I'm like, "All right, thank you."
You did the right thing because we appreciate more the people who actually make the effort. So.
I did try, and I loved Barcelona. It was great, but I just felt bad. I'm like, sir, I need you to know that I tried. I tried for so long, but your English is so much better than my Spanish. I mean, obviously, because my Spanish is not good, no bueno. But again, so thank you so much. Don't worry about it all, and we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So this is our first season doing graphic novels at all. It's a thing that we have been. We've both been reading all of our lives, but this is the first time we're ever covering for the podcast, and it's so radically different that we're like, oh, there's a whole other element, because we almost like sometimes forget to talk about the art, which is like that's like half the thing we're doing here. But so this is going to be a new type of interview, so we're thrilled to have you here to talk about The Private Eye.
Well, we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'm the last artist you have.
I hope not. I mean, it is going like. My fear is that because we've never interviewed an artist before, that we're going to ask you like basic questions that you've answered a million times already before. So
I use a pencil and pen and paper. So that's
okay, you're not a digital guy. You're not doing it on the iPad or whatever.
Not really. No. I always say that I'm too old for that, but it's really I'm too clumsy, I guess. I don't know.
Well, also, if you've been drawing a certain way for decades, like, why are you going to start? Why are you going to do something new now, right?
That's what I'm saying. It took me so long to learn how to more or less ink, with pen and brushes. That going back right now and starting again with the digital process, it's just too much for me.
I have like I'm not an artist, but I have a very and this is thematic, maybe a little bit thematic, but I have like a Luddite's point of view on like when I see like on Instagram they do like you see like digital like people showing their art digitally, like where they go through it, and maybe it's because it's sped up and it looks so fast, but I like in my brain I am kind of like, you are cheating. This is cheating. It doesn't count.
Well, if it depends. Maybe they're really fast. I've seen people who are really fast drawing. It's not my case, which I am exactly the opposite. If you were to tape me drawing, you would die out of the
you never do like things at like Comic-Con or whatever where you'll like do quick sketches for people and stuff like that?
I always, every time that I do a signing, I always do a quick sketch. But quick sketch for me is usually 10 minutes. So
you've got like a very long line with people at the back going like, what's going on up there?
I have a very short line that takes a long time to get through.
All right. Well,
all right. So I guess the first question, this is something that we talked about on our episode, and I'm sure it's like one of the very first questions you always get about this book. But the actual presentation of The Private Eye, instead of being like the more portrait, it's the landscape thing. And it looks different. It feels different. It turns different. It reads different. How did that come about? Was that a choice that you made? Was that a choice that you all collectively made? Like, where did that come from? Was that always the intention, or did you start drawing and you were just like, this is how it's meant to be?
Well, the story goes that when it was not our first intention, certainly it wasn't Brian's intention when he first called me and told me about the project, and we agreed to work on it. But at the time, I'm talking 2011 now, so 12 years ago. And I had been thinking for a long time on trying to find new ways of distributing comic books. And it always seemed to me that the mm, unexplored option at the time was uh, through the internet, which it had been done, but not in the way that I thought that could be done, so that it would be profitable for both the authors and the readers. So basically, my idea was to do a comic book that we would present in a website and present it in a way that could be downloaded by the reader through a pay what you want model. So you can download it for free if you want, or you can pay if you choose to. And also that you would be able to download it directly into your computer. So
Mm-hmm.
at the time was really not the 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 common system, because it worked. It was our system is DRM free. DRM
Yep.
is the term that's used, right, for actually just you rent your comic. You don't really buy it and own it. You rent it and it's stored somewhere in the cloud. So if the store where you bought it from closes down and closes down the server, you will lose your comic book. So my idea was that you would own that comic book, that download, so you would actually have a file on your computer if you wanted to. Back to your question, in order to for that to for the reader to understand that it was a comic book that was made for a digital presentation at the time when iPads weren't as popular. They had already come out. I'm not sure, but they weren't as popular. So I was thinking about computers.
Mm-hmm.
My idea was to do it in a widescreen format.
Cool. Very cool.
That's where the format comes in. But that didn't come about until we were. Brian had already written the first issue, and thinking that it was going to be a normal 24, 22 comic book for actually for Image at the time. And it wasn't until he had finished that first script that I came to him with my crazy idea of, putting it out digitally through a website that we would create with this crazy pay what you want model. And I thought he did say that I was crazy. We both agreed.
I read the emails in the back of the in
Yeah.
the back of the book. Yeah.
Well, that was more or less the process exactly. And but he being pretty much as crazy as I am, he agreed to do it. So then we went along with that, and we had to change the approach to the work in order to fit it into this new widescreen format. Where the pages is really a landscape.
Was there any like adjustment to sort of muscle memory? Because I imagine over years of the like traditional comic book format of like even like the 9-panel grids or whatever, like switching to this new thing, is there like you have to rethink the way your brain like processes the images?
Absolutely, yes. And it was hard at the beginning. There's a lot of stuff that I look at it and it really doesn't work, but we were trying to adjust, and Brian was trying to adjust too, because it was difficult for him to think. Our advantage was that since we were putting it out ourselves and there was no limit to the page count, I could distribute the information that was given to me through the script in different ways. So I didn't have to worry about fitting everything into that 24, 22 page count. That's the standard format for publishers. So that meant that I could play around with the elements, with information, build the pages in different ways than maybe what Brian had in mind when he wrote the script. But still, it took a long time for both of us to adjust. I don't think we really got a hang of it until maybe our next project, which was Barrier.
So now when you're successful, you put this out yourself, people can pay what they want, you have it all to the people, and then Image is like, we're going to collect this and put this out as a hardcover book, like this beautiful, hardbound book.
Yeah.
Did that cause headaches in terms of like adapting it or releasing it, because it's like it's such a different format than it normally is? Or was that just, they're like, we know what it looks like and we're going to make it work?
It was easier than I thought. I thought it would
Okay.
be more complicated, but I mean, it was really much more expensive to print because, but I mean, it wasn't the landscape format. It's not something new. I mean, Frank Miller did it with 300, for example. But it was always with the same size as a regular comic book. You just flip it.
Mm-hmm.
But our format was different because the size was really the size of a screen, of a computer screen, because I made it in order for it to fit exactly with a computer screen. And computer screens, even though when you look, I thought they were, more square than they actually are. They are really they are really really widescreen. And so it turned out that it was much more expensive to do that because you cannot use the same the paper in the same way. So you lose a lot of paper when printing the book. And it was a very it's a very heavy book. It's like 320 pages, so it's an expensive book, yeah, to make. So that was a little bit of a problem, but Image didn't seem to have any trouble with it.
That's good.
There is something grand about the almost paradox of this, like, because it's a paradox to start off with, because the book, it's like a book about an internetless society that you're publishing exclusively on the internet, and it's a pay what you want model. And then to like flip that for, like, I guess, quote unquote, more traditional readers, then it turns into this print thing that is like, and this is not a complaint. I bought, and I'm happy to have the hardcover of it, to like a quite expensive book. So it's like you're like balancing between these two worlds in this parodic, oxymoronic kind of way. That's like, I thought that was a real.
Yeah, it was a little bit of that was a little bit of serendipity at the beginning, because my idea of doing a comic book through the internet was had nothing to do with Brian's idea. They were like simultaneous but
Mhm.
independent from each other. So the fact that they came together uh, in this particular project was really, it was a strange coincidence. Uh,
Yeah, there's always kind of a miracle when form matches content in such a
yeah,
perfect way. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
and printing it afterwards was a little bit of we never had the plan of printing it. We thought we would never print it. That was the original plan. But by the time we finished it, Image had been insisting for a long time, and we had said no. But the opportunity came for us to do a Walking Dead story in
Mm.
Panel Syndicate in exchange for the rights to publish the Private Eye at Image. And we thought that that was too good of an opportunity, for more people to learn about the website and about the projects that we had there, uh, for us to pass on that. So we agreed to publish it, and in turn, we had a Walking Dead special on Panel Syndicate, a digital special that stayed digital for years before uh, Kirkman actually printed it. But a lot of people weren't happy because we had said that we would never print it, and we did print it in the end.
Oh.
So that was a little bit of a
Yeah, but you're always gonna that those kind of people are always gonna be upset about something, right? It's like, you said this. It's just like, well, things change.
Also, it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
there's an irony to it that works in a way, you know?
yeah. I think what did I thought about the name for the hardcover. It was like the Cloudburst edition
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
because in the comic book, the Cloudburst is the term to which they refer to the internet shutting down.
Yep.
So this is actually, the hardcover is actually the private eye edition in an internetless world.
Yeah.
So
So now, if there's a solar flare or something, you're still safe. You still have your hardcover copy on your shelf
exactly.
there. Yeah.
So a question that I had for you that we talked a lot in our episode about how it's a futuristic society. It's still based on our current one, and like all of this obsolete technology or this technology that we know today becomes obsolete. Like one of my favorite things was when they have to like when the grandfather has to figure out a way to like connect the Zune, because I just love the idea of the Zune.
Yeah.
But there's still things like in the background, like I saw like a sign for Tesla. Like there's still some things that exist that persist through the cloudburst and just like are still around in the future.
Yeah.
Was there a way that you determined, or was that just kind of like fun stuff? Like, did you think about like what could survive, what would survive the internet crashing, and like what could still be around, or do you just have some fun like putting things in the background?
No, no. Mostly it was things that we had to. Some of them were Brian, some of them were mine. Like the Zune idea was totally Brian because I didn't even know what a Zune was.
No,
Very few people
no
do.
one knows what the Zune
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and there were a lot of Zune fans. I found out afterwards because some people were really excited about
We
it.
are
Yeah.
few, but we
They-
are mighty.
Yeah, I love it.
So yes, and some of the other stuff like the Tesla thing, the Kodak thing, and there were things that I thought that I was thinking about stuff that would be around around that time. The Kodak sign, for example, was something that I thought was especially funny because I think when I drew it, the company had actually just uh, announced that they were shutting down.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, in my future, you're still going on strong. So I had
Well,
this
like
guy.
I think since you drew that though, like somebody bought the brand and they're like relaunching it as this kind of like niche thing. So like Kodak's never going to really die. Like even though Kodak died, they're still always going to be around. So
Does Kodak still make all the movie film? I thought that I
don't-
thought they were still going in some way.
I don't know.
I don't even know if there's a movie film anymore. I don't.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like Christopher Nolan's like personal stash and like that's it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. It's slowly going away.
Another thing I noticed, and I don't have the vocabulary to really describe this in a way that makes me sound smart at all, so I'm going to apologize in advance to you and to anybody listening. But one thing that we talked about in the episode was the way this comic looks, the book looks, reminds me of like classic superhero comics, like with the bold primary colors. And I think that kind of, we talked a little bit about how that suggests to your brain like it's a certain type of story where there's gonna be like people with powers or abilities or whatever, and there's some technology that doesn't exist, but like for the most part, like this is a very grounded, realistic story. How did that come about in terms of the way that it looks versus the way that it sort of plays out? Was there an irony there, or is just like these are the colors that you wanted to look for? And like I'm not exactly sure the question I'm asking because I just don't have the illustrative vocabulary to ask, but it looks a certain way, but it feels a different way.
I think I understand. I think it did a good job. I think. I would
Well,
say.
thank
I'm
you.
gonna try and
Hopefully,
answer.
fingers crossed.
So part of it is actually it's the fact that it looks a little bit like a superhero comic book is because of my art style, my drawing style, which
Mhm.
is a little bit it comes from a superhero tradition, and but I'm a little bit my references in that area are what people would consider old-fashioned now. So people from the 60s, 70s, and 80s would be my my actual uh, my actual artistic reference for my drawing style. So that's probably what brings that about.
Yeah.
And but when you talk about the color choice, well, the color choice has to do with Munsa's idea of color, and and we thought about this future as being really bright, and so we wanted to, precisely because it was a noir, it was part of a noir genre. We wanted to kind of drift away from what the usual look for that type of
Mm-hmm.
story would be. The dark colors and the more monochromatic palette. So, and we instead decided to, that it would have really bright colors all around. I wanted, for example, the skies to be purple at night, stuff like that. So that ended up with a very wide range of bright colors all around that I think fit the story well. Also because even though it could have easily we could have easily based it more on a 50s, 40s and 50s kind of detective story. Uh, I thought that it was better to give it a more of an 80s approach. So that's also a little bit where the inspiration for the whole visual look of it, both in terms of style, of drawing style and coloring style comes from.
I love it.
Yeah, now that you mention it, there is like a kind of Ditko lankiness to the protagonist of the story. And we talked a little bit about like Chinatown and other noirs like that, where it's like traditionally, there is like a dark force trying to control a major resource and
Uh-huh.
things like that. And so like that bleeds into this, but then the visual style of it being so bright, really like drives it away from those traditional noirs. I want to say this is probably mentioned in the letters between you and Brian at the end, but there's like a conscious effort to move away from like Blade Runner, right?
I was afraid that people would make too much of a comparison between the story and Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was I think it was a little bit inevitable. The moment that I decided that it would, have this kind of 80s look, and it was set in LA, I knew it was gonna be hard, and I think there are things that are just similar, not because I consciously, took away from the movie, but they're just there because they're just kind of the
Right.
logical, way to go.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, Blade Runner didn't. I don't know how much it entered my mind like other than it feels different from Blade Runner. I mentioned Blade Runner specifically because I think it's like different enough from that to for it to not feel.
For me, it's different in the sense that Blade Runner really is kind of grim and bleak,
For sure. Yes,
and
absolutely.
ours was kind of cleaner, and because it's not supposed to be, even though some people call it a dystopia, to us it was almost more of like a utopia, a place. So it's kind of this kind of weird mixture between both. But we didn't want the people to think that just because there's no internet, the world is a worse place now.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
part of the reason, why the colors are so bright and it's such a clean, neat world is because we wanted to, move away from that sense of it being like a dystopian world.
No, and that's something we talked about too, because in most things, like we did an entire module of this podcast about books around the internet. And so we talked a lot about technology in that season and social media and so on and so forth. And in most things in terms of tech, I'm more of an optimist, and Bob over here is more of a pessimist, and just, it's a nice dichotomy. It works for the podcast. But we talked about whether this book was optimistic or pessimistic. I think you kind of cover sort of both angles. And then sort of coincidentally, also the season we did The Seeds by Ann Nesenti, and that's also about a society where like half the people have been like, we don't want the internet, we're going back to the olden days. And it was very interesting to us to sort of compare and contrast pessimism, optimism about a future that is both very similar and very different from ours. And I'm wondering if that was a conversation you guys had about like whether you see things without, like, a time without the internet as a good thing or a bad thing, or just it depends on what you make of it.
Well, also, right before you answer, also it just the comparison for The Seeds too, like the stark difference between your world of that versus David Aha's world of that is like wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have very different styles, I think.
Yeah.
and he did go for a completely monochromatic
Hmm.
approach. Yeah, I think, but definitely that's a conversation we had, and we very consciously didn't want uh, to give either point of view, the advantage, because uh, we didn't want to position ourselves, on one side or another, because there's obvious advantages and disadvantages to both worlds, the world without the internet or without social media, and with it. So, and Brian was, I think, tried hard for both point of views to be presented in a way that would be, understandable and relatable for the reader. So you could
Sure.
go at any, point. You could go like, yeah, maybe it's better that, this world without the internet. And at some points we're like, this is not working. We were doing better with the internet. So you have different characters
Hmm.
defending each point of view.
There is something very satisfying about reading it and being like, he's on my side, and then like a couple pages later being like, wait, I don't agree with that part at all. So that's like I love getting worked back and forth like that when reading something.
Yeah, we didn't want the book to be a presentation of our ideas,
Hmm.
rather, but more of a reflection, not a reflection. We wanted people to think about those ideas, because we don't even know. So it was more a way for us to think about uh, about those ideas, and present it to the reader in a way that they would think about them too, without really having a clear idea ourselves about, a clear opinion about either.
Yeah, no, that's I guess my preferred mode of storytelling, because it's not like you're presenting it like such a complex idea that to have like one opinion on it would be a disservice to the complexity
Yeah,
of it.
Brian is, I think, is usually in all his stories very worried about, presenting uh, his point of view of the
Yeah,
world through his stories, or through his characters, because there's a real risk of coming across as preachy.
yeah.
And I think he's always really very careful about that, to the point where I think sometimes he's even been accused of having ideas which are actually the opposite of the ideas he has.
Yeah, he's so great though. Let's just have a moment of praise for Brian K. Vaughan. He's truly like one of the guys that's really doing it out there.
Yeah, no, I hate him. No, he's a bullshit.
Did you? So you guys did that Doctor Strange book together. Did you know him before that? Were you like, I don't know how, like, collaborations work in the comics industry. Like, were you friendly before that, or did you get paired up, or how did your relationship with him begin?
Oh, I've told this story so many times that I have the feeling that everybody knows about this, but
I don't know anything about
obviously not.
anything, Marcos. I am very dumb and illiterate.
No, no, I'm happy to tell you this very very simple story about how we met. Um, we were both living in New York City back in 1999, and we were both starting, and we got paired together on a short story for a Batman series, Gotham City Secret Files. It was like a 6-page story or 8-page story, and we were both like really young and starting out. And so we met at the editor's office, and as we were walking out, it turned out that we were neighbors. So,
Oh,
Wow, look at that.
yeah, I was living in Christopher Street, and he was living just, I think, on West 10 or something. So it was just like a block away. So that allowed us to get together through the course of, working on this short 8-page story. And by the time I went back to Barcelona, we stayed friends, and we stayed in touch, and we tried to work together again on a few projects before we finally were able to make it happen with the Doctor Strange
Hmm.
story and at Marvel.
Very cool.
So and that's the story. Very simple.
Yeah,
But
I love it.
we had been friends for years before we actually got to work on Doctor Strange.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Another question about the private eye. So one thing that I love in movies or TV shows, sometimes it's mostly movies, sometimes TV shows, depending on how they're told to do it too. But I love a delayed title card, like where you're like an hour into a movie, like it's a 3 hour long movie, then all of a sudden the title card drops. You're like, oh, here we go, like the movie's starting. And I think one thing that's very cool about the private eye is that, the title page comes at any point. Like I think there's at least one issue that like the last page is the title page. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's, if you like that about movies too, if like where the idea came to like drop the title, because people know what book they're reading, but it's
Yeah.
just you do it so effectively, and I'm wondering what the thought process was there, and if you also have the same kind of like fascination with movies that I do, just like, oh, where's it going to come?
Yeah, I mean I do like that, and it's very cinematic, I guess, a
Hmm.
very cinematic idea and concept to really use in a comic book. And I just since it's the Private Eye is episodic because it was released as single issues,
Hmm.
uh, and so it really when you read it all together, it's kind of weird to keep seeing every 30 pages seeing the title and the credits, but it made sense as single issues to remind the reader about the title. And I just like it. It's just like a punctuation, I guess, at some point of the story. It's like I don't know. It's a very it's difficult to explain. It's just I just
It's just when it feels right.
yeah. It's exactly when it felt right, and that's something that Brian I think always left to me to decide. So to
Cool.
the point where I think on one chapter, on chapter six, I actually made the probably the biggest change to any of the scripts when I moved a scene around. Because originally, this is the chapter where the inspector, the journalist actually, gets shot at the hospital, uh, and and they kidnap Mel, and they go away with a. It ends in an elevator with them going down, and one of the bad guys has been killed. This originally ended at in that particular scene, but I felt like uh, then we had the scene that went before that scene was the scene where they go through LA and they find the wall that the big wall that stops the ocean
Hmm.
from coming in, and then they get to this guy's house and they find the doll, and then the other guys arrive, and then we move to the hospital, and then the whole scene at the hospital happens, and you end with the scene at the elevator. And it just felt to me that it worked better if we split the scene where they arrive at the wall. We split it in two, and before they arrived to that guy's house, we went to the hospital, and then after the guy gets shot at the hospital, then we go back and we go back to the main characters who are finally arriving at the house. So we end with Ravina and the shotgun, waiting for them.
Yeah.
And so and but I had the credit page at the last page of the hospital scene because that's where it originally had to end. So it did feel like it could end there, but then you had like a sort of epilogue.
Very cool.
Yeah. So and that's one of the that's that particular issue. We had the credits there, and sometimes it was at the beginning, sometimes it was right at the last page. It depended really on what it felt to me, what it felt right.
It
Very
really
cool.
works as something as like an interruptive force
Yeah.
to it, with like to create tension or to break tension or to like uh I don't know, introduce the action in a new way. It's really
Yeah,
like one of the
it's
things that in the visual medium works
it's
like
difficult for me to explain. It's something that I felt worked. It really is a moment where you have to pause for a moment because it's an element that it's not part of the story really. So it makes you stop for a moment and kind of but it's really very cinematic also. So I don't know. It's obviously it's an influence from movies, I think.
For sure.
I don't know if this is a fair question. I don't even know if it's one you could answer because again, we've never talked to I think an artist like this on here. But is there a particular panel or splash page or cover page or something that's like one of your favorite things that you drew? Like, is there a particular thing that you created for this book that's your favorite?
Um,
Maybe they're all your babies, and it's an impossible question. I don't know.
no, I hate most of my work. So the problem is to find something that I like.
Hmm.
Um, I would say probably my favorite piece of art for it would be the cover to issue one, which is the cover to the hardcover.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, that's there's in the traditional sense of the word, iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that because I think it basically because it works as an image. I think it works
Hmm.
as a cover, as something that striking enough to draw the eye to the cover, but still has all the elements to explain more or less, what you're gonna find inside. You have the main character in a mysterious way, and all these people dressed up as it. So it's not spelling it out, but it gives you enough information so that when you open the book, you're kind of like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. I love the cover of the grandfather flipping the reader off. I think that's very cool.
I like that too. I like that too. But I have problems with my art, so I prefer this one.
I'll go back to something that you said earlier, and maybe you can use it as an opportunity to talk about your collaborations with Munza. And that's when you were talking about it being utopian, whereas some people would think of it as being dystopian. I think a lot of the masks and things like that. Everyone's wearing the masks, and when you're walking around the street, people are wearing the masks, and it reminds me like specifically of like Disney World almost in a way that you have just people in essentially in costume walking around creating this like larger than life identities for themselves, and I just imagine um how fun that is to draw and how fun that is to color, right? Because it feels like an opportunity for you to just do like whatever, create this like non-context mask that you always wanted to draw, or this opportunity to use incredibly bright colors in contrast in ways that they wouldn't normally be used. Is that the case? Because I got the sense that it was really fun making that.
It was a nightmare. It was,
Oh,
it's an absolute nightmare. I mean, it was. I think the worst part about it was trying to figure it out at the beginning because the first time Brian told me about the story about the concept, I couldn't understand it. I was
yeah.
like, "What do you mean people are running around, in masks and costumes? Like, is this like a carnival? Is this like, And I could only imagine people, dressed up like clowns and
Right.
firemen, and I was like cowboys. This doesn't make any sense. This is just, it's gonna look stupid until at some point, it clicked to me, and it was like, oh, this is fashion. This is I don't have to think about it as costumes, as carnival costumes, as but rather as just this road that fashion has taken, And actually, when you start digging into it and looking into the fashion world, there's just crazy things going on in outfits and stuff that I could just, I was pulling from here and there, from everywhere actually, to come up with designs that would work. And but yeah, I mean, it was kind of fun, and I have tons of reference to I could probably make another book with all the stuff that I didn't put in, but
Or just design a fashion show. Create like get those people up on a runway. Get them out
no,
there.
no. It was, I think, most of them were too much of a rip-off from actual things that I don't think they would be original enough.
I see.
But it,
I
but it
see.
was fun. It was fun to draw, and I had like ideas that I thought like there's some things that are in the background that make sense to me.
Hmm.
Like there's one panel, the big panel where when you first see the street, with all the people in costume walking. There's this guy with or a couple of guys with this big kind of Mickey Mouse masks that are not
Mm-hmm.
really Mickey Mouse because we don't want to get sued, but and they're like they are kicking the shit out of someone, and I just figured that this would be kind of like an LA gang of Mickey Mouse gangsters or something who would run around kind of like a of this world's version um, of the Clockwork Orange.
I was when you were saying that, I was thinking that, or I was thinking of the Warriors, the Walter Hill film.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's the same. It's like gangs that have like sort of established their personalities on costume and thing, which is
Really?
like it's like the real world, but like just exaggerated.
Okay.
Right. Instead of like just wearing colors, they'll wear like a baseball uniform, and now they're like a gang of basebal guys.
Yeah. Well, that was my fear at the beginning when Brian told me the story. Like people would just be dressed as with a baseball uniform, and the other one would be a clown, and the other one would be so yeah. That fortunately, I think I found a way to transform that into something else.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing we like to ask everyone that we interview for this podcast is if people have read The Private Eye and they love it and they want more, do you have recommendations for either other books or movies or any kind of media that you would recommend people go? Because, Bob over here programs all our modules around a certain theme. So this, it's kind of broadly just graphic novels because we've never done that before. But, in the past we've done, books set at schools or books set, about the internet or whatever. So, thematically or stylistically or whatever, if people love this and they've read this and they want to go more, what would you recommend in terms of things that either you personally love or that are similar that you drew inspiration from or anything?
I would recommend everything that I've done. I would say just go out and
that's a great answer.
All my stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Thematically, there's a bunch of stuff that and it's so broad in what it talks about that you could go from the Clockwork Orange to anything, Blade Runner, or so it's so yeah. I would stick to just get our books. Go
Cool.
buy Barrier, which is by the same team, or Friday, which I'm doing now with Ed Brubaker, and see if you like that.
Well, that's actually so.
For sure, yeah.
Do your answer kind of it made me realize something. When you're looking for inspiration for a new book, like do you mostly draw inspiration from like movies or from other books? It seems like what you're referencing most common is just a different medium altogether. Like where do you typically find inspiration for your art from, or is it just sort of from wherever?
It depends. I always think of the story first. So whenever the writer, tells me the story, what they want to talk about, the concept, that will take me different places. Where I will, with Private Eye, it was, it was certain places. It was movies or the 80s looks. It was also manga. Manga was a huge influence for me. For example, for creating the character, because Brian had a completely different idea in mind for a character where he would be more. He was almost like a spirit, like the spirit kind of character, with a trench coat and the hat. It was kind of like a 50s guy, and I wanted to move away from that, and take it more to a more modern sensibilities, I guess. So that I went to manga, and that's when I thought about the idea of the mask at the back of the hood. I thought it was kind of like a very Japanese idea. I don't know why. It's so kind of crazy.
Did you feel like when you drew that, were you like, I nailed it? Because it really is. It's like it's a great image, and it's great to like, as the first cover, it's something that introduces you to that in such a beautiful way. Like, and I know that you said that you get down on your own art sometimes, but you had to have felt like you nailed that, right?
You know what? I think it's one of the few instances where I really was like, I think I got it.
All right,
I was,
good. I'm glad.
I
Sweet,
think
yeah.
I distinctly remember sketching the character and going through different iterations of it, and suddenly the idea came to me. I was like, what if it's if it's on the back of the hood, if it's a hood and it would have like a smiling face, and then I thought about because I knew the trench coat disappeared, and I thought, well, if we have a smiling face in the back and it disappears, but the smile remains there with the eyes, that would be kind of a cool visual, like the Cheshire cat or something.
You should like I don't know how expensive this would be, or maybe you already have it done. You should get one of those made for yourself, and then you can wear it around.
Oh, I have plenty of them.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. All right, great.
Yeah, I go all over the city, in my invisible cloak with a Cheshire smile on my back.
I love it. The other thing, and this is again maybe a little bit thematic to what we're talking about, is like as a source, because we're like we can be a quote unquote source now. Like we have the ability to edit Wikipedia and then use this as like the little footnote. So is there anything that you would like to lie about yourself that we can then put on Wikipedia as misinformation to trick people into thinking about you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm 6 feet tall and have a full set of hair.
Okay. You're not the first person to want to lie about your height.
Well, so our mutual friend Heather Antos, who says hi, by the way, also wanted us to lie about her height, but she wants to be shorter.
Yeah.
So
really?
Yeah, she's tired of being a taller woman. She wants to be a little bit shorter, and so the inches that we steal from her, we can give to you. How's that sound?
That sounds perfect to me. I hate her because
I know. So do we. Isn't she the worst?
She's the worst. She's got hair and she's tall. Give me a break.
Ugh. So talented just makes me angry. Well, thank you so much, Marcos. This has been wonderful. We really appreciate your time, and this was a blast.
Thank you. It's been great fun. I hope I made some sense.
Yeah, for sure. I certainly look forward to picking up Friday. That's and anything else. Is there anything else that you'd like to promote, or anything that you have that coming out that we should know about?
All of your books?
Yeah. All of my books
all of
have
them
been out, but no. Basically, now I'm just finishing up the last chapter of Friday. So if you want to support us with that, that's great. It's over at Panel Syndicate, or it's also in print. At Image Comics, the first two books with the first 6 issues. So, yep, that's it.
Oh wait, one other very important question. We play a little fast and loose with copyright here, and we can, if you want the exit music on this episode to be anything, either that just a song you love or a song that reminds you of the Private Eye or that might go along well with it. Is there a particular song you want to use as the outro to this episode?
Let me think, because we made a mixtape for of the Private Eye for a website for Multiversity Comics at one point.
I mean, I know. For example, you had there's like a very clear drawing of the Mark Oliver Everett album, in there, and there's things like that throughout the book. So, I could see a soundtrack getting constructed just from like what's in the background and what vinyls they have and things like that.
Yeah, I think on our mixtape we definitely had a song by the Eels. We had a song by Radiohead. We had a song. Kings of Leon was in there. A couple of less known Scottish bands that I like.
Oh, I think I found the list. You've got songs from Arcade Fire, The Divine Comedy,
yes,
Pulp, Snow Patrol,
yes,
Morrissey. The Radiohead song was Fake Plastic Trees. You got Kings of Leon, Bright Eyes, Madonna.
Madonna we had because she's in the story.
So
That's,
maybe we'll end this episode with Material Girl, because she is the Material Girl, and that's the one on the split, apparently.
That's perfect. I mean, it's definitely shows my age.
And Madonna has come up a lot in conversation between me and Bob recently, so
Oh, well,
Material Girl herself.
there you go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Marcos. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.